Do you like horror comics that make you really uncomfortable, but in the best kind of way? Well, then you might be in for a treat. We're going to talk about bite-sized tales of terror, the one-shot from Scout Comics. See you in 3. Welcome back to Comical Opinions. This is our review of Bite-Sized Tales of Terror, the one-shot from Scout Comics. This issue delivers 3 tales of unsettling terror. In the first one, a man finds out real love isn't always real. In the second, an abused wife gives her husband the shock of his life. And in the third, a cosmetics company develops a new perfume that's to die for. But before we get started, please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the bell for notification. Your attention is greatly appreciated, and make sure you stay tuned to the end for the final score. Let's talk about the credits. This is a real easy one. Bite-Sized Tales of Terror is written and drawn and colored, and the cover art presented by John Clark. The lettering is done by April Brown. So aside from April's magnificent contributions, this is pretty much a one-man show. All right, so let's dig into the meat of the issue. This is a one-shot, but it's also an anthology, which is 3 short stories. All of them are horror-based, and all of them are very mature in nature. This is a mature-rated comic for a very good reason, because you get some pretty disturbing violence and even some nudity, particularly in the first issue. So just be forewarned, if you're a new reader, you got to know what you're in for. This is horror. This is rated R horror from start to finish. First story, which is titled Objects. In this issue, we have Tommy and Angela. They are lovers, and Tommy is recognized that this might be the one. Angela might be the person he is truly, fully in love with. When they are done with a particularly rigorous lovemaking session, Tommy goes to the bathroom just to freshen up a little bit, and he bumps himself against the door jamb, and he notices that there's a little cut or some kind of protrusion on his chest. When he's looking in the bathroom mirror, he sees what looks like a small bead or a stone poking out from his chest. And he decides that, well, this is not right. This is absolutely wrong. I've got to get rid of this thing. And then he pulls on it, and then he keeps pulling on it, and he keeps pulling on it. And it is the worst case of hangnail you have ever witnessed in your entire life. And it feels exactly what it would suspect. And what he winds up doing is ripping off this, basically what amounts to some kind of stone and bone necklace that has been embedded in his skin all around his neck. And we learned from that particular experience is that it was placed there by Angela, because Angela is, we won't spoil it, but she is not what she appears to be physically on the outside, much to Tommy's very disgusted dismay. Leave it at there, and we'll move on to the next one. The next story in this anthology is called Contact. In this story, we have Joelle and Jake. Joelle is a wife who is under the thumb of an abusive husband named Jake, who's a plumber. And Joelle has been going on and on and on for the past few days about witnessing gray aliens, the type that you would see in, say, The X-Files or any number of paranormal TV shows. Jake has had enough of her rambling on, hits her and knocks her out, and he goes to work for the day. When he comes back, he sees that Joelle is not at the house, and all of a sudden she sneaks up on him and cold cocks him in the back of the head with a wrench. He passes out. When he wakes up, he finds that he has trouble moving and trouble speaking and trouble just getting around, and his vision is impaired. And what we come to find out is Joelle has completely wrapped up Jake in duct tape and strings of Christmas lights. But that's not the end of it, because it's one thing to be wrapped up and think that your spouse is crazy. It's quite another when your spouse decides to plug in all the electricity that's wrapped around your body in a conductive fashion. But wait, there's more. It turns out that maybe Joelle is not as crazy as Jake thinks she is. We'll leave it at that and leave the ending for the spoiler, for a spoiler if you choose to pick up this issue, which at this point we recommend. The third and the final issue, or the third and the final story in this anthology, is called Crave. We have a company called Carly Cosmetics, and they are in the middle of a shareholders meeting when their top scientist, Shari, barges in, cuts off the meeting, and says, "I've got the discovery of a lifetime." And she asks Carly, who is the CEO, to demonstrate by dabbing her wrist with this new kind of perfume that Shari's developed based upon a specific type of insect, namely bees. And when she says, "Gentlemen of the room who are currently in the meeting, come sniff this and tell me what you think." And what they find out is that any male who sniffs this perfume, even though it's very subtle and very slight, they suddenly have amorous feelings towards Carly in a very positive way. But unfortunately, Shari overestimated the power of the pheromone inducing concoction, and that creates a little bit of a it turns from interest to frenzy, and then from frenzy to chaos, and it gets pretty ugly, pretty badly, pretty quick, and you can imagine where it goes from there. So that's the long and the short of this story. Now let's talk about the positives and the negatives. What did we like about Bite-Sized Tales of Terror from John Clark and Scout Comics? Uh, cringy in the sense of you can feel it in your gut, inducing horror. Each one of these stories, tales, basically has a concept of love or some kind of sense of relationship or affection as an underpinning of that binds the stories together, taken from completely different perspectives, but they all have some element related to relationships and love in each one of them. But each one of them is very painful from the outset. They deal with gross horror, some body horror, bloody, stabbing, ripping, tearing pain that you just can't get it out of your gut and out of your mind, which is exactly what John Clark was probably going for. So if you like horror that isn't afraid to get you uncomfortable and get you squirming in your seat, this is exactly the kind of anthology that you're looking for. So kudos and thumbs up to John Clark for the concepts and, generally speaking, the execution and just making you feel ooky and skeezed out in all the right ways. What didn't we like about Bite-Sized Tales of Terror, one shot from Scout Comics? Overall, great ideas, great concept, great execution. If we're going to pick on something, the last bit of the second story, which is Contact, related to Joelle, who's an abused wife who believes in aliens, the ending felt like it got cut short. Like either they ran out of pages or they just wanted to leave some ambiguity up to the reader's imagination, what have you. The other two stories felt very complete and very and very very fully fleshed out. The middle story, you got to a certain point and then you're just sort of told about what happens after that. It would have been nice to see it continue all the way to a more thorough, a more full and complete conclusion. Overall, it's still a great issue, but that middle story felt like it just got cut a little too short. How about the art? So we've reviewed John Clark's comics before. He has a very unique, very stylized approach to comic storytelling. The compositions are very traditional. I mean, you know what you're getting in for, but he has this way of using reference photographs and then redoing them with some sort of abstract methodology towards how he places uh, objects on the panel. For example, sometimes you just get shapes and images that are metaphorical in their perspective, and so it's not necessarily everybody's cup of tea. It's not very clean type of traditional comic book story art, but it works. It works for the kinds of stories that John Clark likes to tell. So, admittedly, it's stylized. It may not be everybody's cup of tea, but for what you're trying to for what's trying to be what's projected here and what's being presented here, I think it suits the story very well. Final thoughts. What do we think about Bite-Sized Tales of Terror? It makes you skeeved out, uncomfortable. It's creepy. It's gross, and it's that kind of horror. So if you like that kind of horror, this is a great book. The one down point, which is a minor down point for the middle story, is even not that bad. So generally speaking, this is a solid comic from start to finish, which is unusual for anthology comics because there's always some ups and downs and stinkers in the middle. But on this one, John Clark pretty much nailed it from beginning to end. Therefore, we're going to give Bite-Sized Tales of Terror, the one shot from Scout Comics and John Clark, a respectable and deserved 9 out of 10. Well, I hope you like this review. Let us know, what do you think about horror comics? Do you prefer them in a larger format? Do you like serialized anthology type comics? What do you think about short story or flash fiction type of horror? What's your favorite? Do you have a favorite, or do you just not like horror comics? Either way, let us know in the comment section. I want to hear your opinions about this stuff, and in particular, what do you think about anthology comics as a whole? Otherwise, thank you very much for joining, and please stay tuned through the outro for the next review.